Electrocast.
Conscious living is where we create the connection. And in our daily activity, we're actually living out those deeper values. There is no disconnect. And then it feels, we're being a loving person. We're being a truthful person. All of these things that are actually who we are anyway. Every single one of us was that little soul that said, well, I want to come down here, especially now during the big shift where it's all on the line, existential crisis, and we said, well, I want to go down. I want to be part of that. I want to see if I can, maybe be a healer, an alchemist, just do a little part, to help create this shift, this pivot in this new direction. And there's our invitation here, all of us.
Welcome, beautiful beings, to season 2 of the Cosmic Love Antenna podcast with your host, Harrison Ma. This podcast sets the loving intention of creating the mystical space needed to pull back the layers restricting health, alignment, and love. Now let's walk you home to your cosmic spiritual heart space. Good morning, evening, afternoon, magical beings. Welcome back to the Cosmic Love Antenna. Welcome back to another conscious, loving, deep dive into a topic that I know is going to expand your awareness today. As always, before we get into it, a reminder for all of the returning and new souls in the chat today. If this brings you guidance, if this brings you love, if this hits your heart in some magical way, please share this out far and wide with a friend that you think it can support. If you get some specific gems and some insights that I know you will, share it over on Apple and Spotify in any feedback that you have for the show. If you're joining live today on Facebook or YouTube or any of our social channels, please leave your comments as we flow, as I know Steve and I would love to hear your beautiful voice and anything that bubbles up for you. Speaking of Steve, I have the lovely pleasure to welcome Steve Farrell on the show today. Steve is the co-founder and worldwide director of Humanity's Team. Humanity's Team is a global nonprofit changing humanity through conscious community and transformational education. And today, Steve is going to help me dive into this topic of learning to live more consciously. What does this mean? How does this help us connect to others? How does this connect to our awakening process and everything in between? Steve, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the Cosmic Love Antenna.
Harrison, thank you so much for having me. Really been looking forward to this program, being here with your viewers. It's a juicy topic. We're going to have fun. Important topic too.
It really is, right? It's important because, and this is maybe where we can start, Steve. It's important because I feel many of us are stepping into this conscious awakening process more so now than ever. Have you started to notice that in your beautiful work that you do?
I have, absolutely. There in Northern California, where I used to live in Silicon Valley. And when I lived in Silicon Valley, one of the big wave places there, beaches, was called the Mavericks. And the big waves came in there. They actually have a surf competition every year there. And this we have a maverick size wave coming in here right now. Boom. It's still coming in, it's still gaining force and speed and power, this wave. And it goes by many names. We call it conscious living because it's the one that it's the name that's maybe most accessible. But yes, post-COVID, people are looking for more meaning, more purpose. They want to be living into their values, and that's what this is about.
Yeah, I love it, Steve, and I feel your passion as soon as you start talking about this. It swells up in you, and I can't wait to dive into the nitty-gritty of this today. So let's start, and I want to welcome all the people joining in the Facebook community. Jackie, Darlene, I see you there. Good morning, everyone that's popping in. Steve, where I want to start is I want to share a quote that was actually a part of your one sheet that you sent me that I think is powerful, and I want to get your interpretations of it. It's a quote from someone that people might know as Albert Einstein. And Einstein states, "A human being experiences himself as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. So what I want to ask you, Steve, is one, what does this quote reflect to you? And two, in your words, what does it mean to be more conscious?
Let me say, it's such an important quote. And there are other quotes by Albert Einstein, and it's astounding, really. I mean, it's astounding to me that this man, this brilliant man, said this 75 years ago, that we currently have this consciousness, this optical delusion, where we look out in the world, we say, oh, that's Harrison, and this is me. We're clearly separate, and then the earth, well, we're separate from that too, and all of this. And he said that this represents a prison for us. And the balance of the quote goes on to say, so our job must be to free ourselves from this prison and to see what is so, which, and people may know there in the last 15 years of his life, he was working on what was called a unified field theory, which would prove that everything physical and non-physical, from protons, quantum scale objects, to galaxies, cosmological objects, and everything in between, were a part of one thing, all connected, right? He didn't quite get there in his lifetime, but you know what? Scientists are there now. Nobel Prize for Physics, October of last year, Nassim Haramein, Resonance Science Foundation, on and on and on. There's a lot of science. So science is saying what Albert Einstein said, that quote of yours was absolutely precisely true. And so our job is to free ourselves from this prison and to live in this place of, we call it in humanities team, oneness or unity consciousness. There are different ways to represent it, but to see, in a sense, we move the fence posts out to, I'm married and I have 2 kids. So in today's world, a lot of times, well, it's just the 4 of us, with our dog, and we'll put the fence posts around them. This is who we'll take care of. Well, in oneness, unity consciousness, we don't want to do that. That's just, we're connected to all, but we're one. We're one of the 8 billion faces here on the earth. That's a whole different way of living on the earth.
Yeah. And Steve, we don't want to do it for many reasons, right? Obviously, as Einstein said, we don't want to do it because we don't want to exacerbate that delusion. But let's just make it super simple for people that are maybe, new to this and new to the science and new to all of it. We don't want to do it because it stops the flow of love, right? I want to get your thoughts on this, Steve. I believe that the delusion of separation, to begin with, is there so we can learn to love. But if the problem is not the separation existing, the problem is the separation continuing, right? We see the separation. So I, Harrison, can see Steve as a object that I can flow love between and come back into unity with. So I guess, what are your thoughts on love being exchanged through the separation?
Yeah, I love that you're bringing in this aspect of love, because ultimately that's actually what this is about. So we're talking about we're separate, we're one, and science is saying we're one. But why? Why is that important? Because, well, the why is love. Put very simply, that it's really all about love in our with our partner, of course, and our kids. But it's now we're taking those fence posts out, and it's loving everybody who's actually a part of yourself. It's not like you're loving another. They are a part of yourself, all of humankind, the earth, animal life, plant life, and just feeling that free flow of love. And where we come into that, and where we're living that flow of real loving presence, that's where we get to the deliciousness of life. Now, the story that I've got in my book, A New Universal Life, I tell it's a 55-year true story of, me at 12 years old and growing to who I am today. And I was out in Silicon Valley, in the center of wealth creation, where all the, huge financial treasure is. And I didn't find it there. And it's because, what we're talking about is the true prosperity. Yes. And of course, financial prosperity is a part of it, of course. But but it's this loving connection, presence, giving of love, receiving of love. That's where we find the real treasure.
Yeah. And that financial prosperity usually is a symptom of us finding that deeper love, right? Is a symptom. Like I love your background because it shows what most of us get stuck in is we have it in reverse, right? We chase the money expecting the love to be there and very quickly see that it doesn't occur. Where if we reverse it and we emit the love that we are, the money comes in as a symptom of that passion, that desire that starts to move through us. Have you started to see that in the shift that you've moved through, Steve?
Yeah, the irony, Harrison, is that where we hit the jackpot, so to speak, and I did. I created two $75 million companies. That's how I was entered into that whole center of wealth creation. The club, you could call it, with those people that are just where it's a money jackpot. That the irony is when we hit that jackpot and the adoration comes, because in today's world, right, power, fame, and fortune are the big things. When we keep climbing the American dream ladder, there's a lot of cutthroat competition to get there, which cuts us off from a lot of people. The other is that adoration actually it gets in the way of receiving and giving love. It gets in the way. What happens is when I was there and I hit that jackpot, I would meet with people and they would want me to complete their sentence. You give your power away to, this guy, he's a rock star. He started and made all da da da. And everybody's giving their power away to you, and you don't have a chance to be in a true, loving, connected, listening, hearing place, receiving place. That's all cut off. Now, on the other hand, when we start living into our real deepest beliefs, which become our daily activity, which is what we call conscious living, where we feel the divine, the one, you could also use science terms if you like, cosmos or universe or love or life, but where we feel our oneness with all of what is here, and we live into that, then we experience life in this totally different way.
Yeah. I often refer to it, Steve, on this show as remembering what you've been this entire time, right? I'm sure you've referred to it in many ways in the work that you do, but at the end of the day, it's not a gaining of something. It's not a gaining of another one of those material concepts or identities that you were speaking about, but it's almost like a pulling back of the layers of the onion that needed to be seen in the first place, right? Which I guess brings me, Steve, to another question I want to ask you. And I experienced this on my journey, and I experience this with people that I get to support and help. What, in your opinion, will happen? And I don't expect you to know, I don't expect you to predict the future here, but just from the work that you do and the experience that you have, if we don't start shifting into more conscious living as a collective, what do you feel is our direction as a global tribe if this doesn't switch on for people?
So let me get to the first part and then the second part. The first part, remembering. Please. That's so beautiful and so true, is remembering is exactly right, because we all came from, what science is saying is we have all the properties of the one, right? So the Rumi quote then is true. We're not just a drop in the ocean. We're the whole ocean in a drop.
My favorite quote, Steve. My favorite quote.
Yeah, which means, wow, what does that mean? That means that everlasting life, like the one, unlimited potential, like the one, energetic beings, which we're increasingly in touch with, all of the things, psychic, as we feel into the afterlife, there are all of these things. that come in when we really get that we are the whole ocean in a drop. So in humanities team, the spiritual dimension of it, we really go deep with it. This whole, we call it the divine or even divinity, where we feel into that deep love and expression, and where we feel into ourself as an alchemist or healer, in the sense that we're all around people that are challenged all the time, right? People get up, they're having trouble. Young people coming along now saying, what's my hope and what's my possibility? Can I have the relationship I want in today's world? Can I even get to where I want to go? Where we can be an inspiration, where we can offer insight, wisdom, tell people who they are, help them remember who they are. I love Lion King, by the way, right? Because it's got this whole remember theme. Remember, there's this
so
beautiful song in there, and it's true, where we remember we're actually a part of the stars. Because if we can just do that and really remember into the divine presence, the divinity of which we are, that our life is everlasting. You walk around straight and tall. You walk around with good posture. You walk around empowered, in an ultimate way. So that's so important. Now, you were bringing in then the aspect of, well, if we don't journey into a conscious future, what happens? Let me first say, fortunately, I believe with all of who I am that we can and we are journeying into that conscious future. And I'm just a total optimist that we're actually a good way there already. It's just not being reported by the media. But let's still answer the question: what happens if we don't? Well, the things we're seeing, some of that right now. So you're down in Australia. I'm here in the United States. There's extreme weather, right? There's a lot of stuff going on down there with your weather. Same here. That's a function of not remembering, of where we're walking around just as mortals that are, because we learned that we're human, which we are. It's just an incomplete understanding that we're bones and flesh and we'll be 6 feet under one day. That's all true, but there's an expanded reality that we're trying to bring people into. And if we don't come into these new understandings, it's simple as microcosm, macrocosm. As long as we have not remembered, well, the collective doesn't remember, then the weather, the wars like the Ukraine, these things continue. And fortunately, the opposite is true too. We start remembering and we start doing it together. Malcolm Gladwell, tipping point. Whoa, the collective starts tipping into this whole new way of living consciously, heart to heart, right? Where we create this whole new reality here on the earth.
Yeah. I love, Steve. So first of all, thank you for going deeper into the remembering, because it's so sacred and divine. Your bringing in of the earth and how, like the actual earth and how it's being impacted by our decision to consciously awake or not. I want to share something with you and see how it feels. And I'm sure you've acknowledged this or considered this to a degree. But again, something that I like to teach is the understanding that the earth is a soul like us, right? And just like I have a soul contract with Steve to have this beautiful conversation that we're having today, I also have a soul contract with the earth to be alive at this point in time to move through what I need to move through. And in that soul contract, I can make the choice to lean into my free will, which may be destructive, which may lead to more trauma and pain. Or in that soul contract, I can open to my divine will that's going to support the reconnection to the earth heart itself. Have you ever considered that link, Steve, in your experience?
Every day. Yeah, every day. So when we talk about this oneness or unity consciousness, the earth is a huge element in this, with its own soul. Yes, we're on a living planet. This, oneness, incidentally, as the scientists even talk about it, they say the whole of the universe is alive. There's nothing that's dead. It's all alive. The earth is alive. My goodness, this whole where we have not yet remembered, we walk around and treat the earth like a refrigerator, where we're just pulling resources out of it, consuming them and throwing things away like trash. This is a precious, precious planet. Highly evolved beings in the universe. And there are many, there's a lot of wisdom around about how that works. They never, and this just makes sense even to a kindergartner, you would never be trashing or not well stewarding your environment, right? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense at all, right? So we're still maturing as a species here on the earth. And as we mature as a species, then we can realize what I'm calling this universal dream, where we join with others. And of course, there are beings all over the universe. UFOs are increasingly being recognized. Of course, they're here, and even among us, they're highly evolved beings that embodied here. A lot of the kids are, right? So, of course, this is true. So, we're just taking these steps into maturing as a species and recognizing our brotherhood, our partnership with all of the universe, and where we start just being more mature with each other, more caring, more compassionate, more loving, truthful, living into, instead of today, a lot of in the work environment, as we know, there are a lot of people that want to leave their jobs. That's because there's a disconnect right now between your deepest values and your daily activity and how it's lived out. And that disconnect is causing lots of stress and anxiety and even depression. So conscious living is where we create the connection. And in our daily activity, we're actually living out those deeper values. There is no disconnect. And then it feels, we're being a loving person. We're being a truthful person. All of these things that are actually who we are anyway.
Yeah. I had the pleasure, Steve, yesterday. I'm sure you've connected to Roland from the Heart Math Institute, or you've connected to Heart Math Institute at large. And I had him on the show, and we were talking about the impact of, you talked about being in the work environment, but the impact of being in heart coherence in the work environment. And I think this is very linked to what you're saying around conscious living. Conscious living, most of that conscious expansion, it does move through the lower mind and the higher mind, but it begins with the heart in many ways. It begins with dropping back into the heart, because that is really our access point, right? Where we start to connect to each other more deeply. Steve, I want to shift here a little bit, and I want to ask you a question, again, along these lines of conscious living, but more about certain individuals. And before I get to that, I just want to welcome all the people that are joining in the Facebook chat. Sharon, Lance, I see your beautiful comments. Thank you for adding in. I'm happy this is activating you. In your work, Steve, at Humanity's Team, I know you work with a lot of really powerful spiritual leaders, right? You work with Neil Donald Walsh and Michael Beckwith and Greg Braden and all these people that are producing content on the network. And I'm wondering, I've noticed that when I've connected to these powerful, consciously aware humans that are doing work in the world, even yourself to a degree, that there is a presence that they emit. There is a presence of consciousness that we walk around with and we can sort of tangibly connect to. I'm wondering if you could, one, have you noticed this with some of the people you've connected to? And two, what do you think is going on with this presence that people sort of tap into?
Yes. So these are people that you mentioned that are out in the world who have really done their work. Stephen Covey used to talk about his 7 habits, and he said you had to have a private victory, right, before you could have a public victory. So, and these are people who have enjoyed their private victory. Their private victory is they really, really deeply get these things we're talking about, and they embody those things. And this is why their books and their seminars and their retreats and their master classes and all these things are so powerful, because they really get it. They are living into it. They are full speed out in the world, with this wisdom, and people can sense it. It's not just a talking head, where there's an articulation. There's an embodied expression as you mentioned, you really get it. And in the end, that's how this whole tipping point thing is created too. It isn't our words, we can't, if we just write things or we just mouth things, that has very limited power and reach and potential. Whereas when people sense that, oh my gosh, there's a real power here, that's the divinity, that's the divine presence, where one really understands that, and they're taking that energy with them where they go. And of course, when we talk about, in humanities team, we talk about making conscious living pervasive worldwide by 2040. That's in 17 years. So, and what we are talking about is where we are all doing that together in 17 years and change the whole way we live on the planet and the earth, where you were talking earlier about, boy, the earth has a soul, stewarding the earth, really living in right relationship with the earth. We are doing that, because we understand this precious, precious planet that we live on.
Yeah. I think your mission, Steve, it's not just powerful and beautiful, but I feel it's very obtainable. And I think one of the reasons it's obtainable, and this is what I want to get your perspectives on next here, one of the reasons it's obtainable is because of the hardship that we have faced over the last couple of years, right? We could speak about all the examples from, the pandemic to everything in between. But one of the things I've been really grateful for, and I've seen just in my community, and I'm sure you have in yours, has been the polarity of pain and suffering and negativity and all the things. That polarity has pushed all of the awakening conscious beings more into the surface, more into the limelight. Like for me, for example, I actually started my online business right before and as COVID hit. And I don't think that is a coincidence. So I'm wondering have you observed this too, Steve? And what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, absolutely, Harrison. We sometimes we call this whole thing the spiritual gem, right? Where all of the things, actually, there's, you say no coincidence, not random. Absolutely true. There's no coincidence, no random. This is the beautiful thing, is the universe or God, whatever term we want to use, has our back. That wind is blowing in our direction. Even COVID, there were all of these, as you're mentioning here now, silver linings, in COVID, where we were, in a sense, it was like the universe saying, go to your room for a while, right? And as you went to your room, and then you sit with your deepest values, with your vision of the future, with your interests in terms of what life might be. And then we come out of that really as different people, with where people say, I want more meaning in my life. I want to feel purpose in my day-to-day life. I want these deeper values. I don't like this disconnect, so therefore people are leaving jobs where that disconnect is rather strong, and starting their own company or joining conscious companies and things. So yes, we've come strongly out of COVID, propelled actually in this direction that we needed to go. The universe actually, of course, a lot of people transitioned during during COVID. I don't want to diminish that. That's hard on a lot of families, but it did absolutely propel us in this direction of conscious living and conscious journey. We do now have a strong wind at our back as we journey up this hill to this whole new way of living.
Yeah, it's beautiful, Steve. Another way that I sort of see it is, we all have personal, individual shadow work to do, right? The lovely Lance in the chat made a comment, our ignorance leads to our awakening, right? And that's our shadow work, right? All the things that we've repressed and ignored inside of us, when we step into it, it helps us expand. And I think in many ways, everything that happened over the last few years, it was the collective shadow, right? It was the collective shadow that we've been repressing for so long, in many ways, now coming to the surface, and people like you and the work that you're doing and the work that I'm doing and others alchemized the shadow, right? Alchemized the shadow back into love, back into unity, back into connection.
Yeah, we this means that we look at everything. We really, really deeply look at things, including things of where our diet or our thoughts, that go in directions that aren't healthy, where we look at everything and we say, is this who I want to be? Because on the other side of that, after we work through that is, what is the grandest version of the greatest vision that I could ever have about myself? And then we get up each day, and it's not that we're going to be perfect or even excellent, in every minute of every day, but where that is really, that's the vision, that's the dream, that's the goal of, boy, let me just bring my very, very best and my most loving and truthful self, to the world. And of course, it starts with ourselves too. That kind of could be its own topic. Is for many people, people are starting out really rather diminished, not feeling empowered. Not that, when I was saying standing strong and tall, understanding, we are part of the universe. The universe could not be without us. What scientists are telling us are true. There are a lot of people that don't feel that aren't in touch with that, and they don't feel empowered. And there's even anxiety that's substantial, or even depression. And so that's the starting point for ourselves, is really getting in touch with and doing the work of who we are, and really feeling into that, and including the shadow work of what are the things that about ourselves that we feel are rather immature, and aren't helpful at all, are unhealthy. And how do we heal those things? And that's part of this private victory thing that's so important for all of us. So before we can really be all of who we want to be out in the world.
Yeah. I want to shift here now, Steve, to some more sort of connections to conscious living at large in our collective. And through Humanity's team and the work that you do in the world, you have a really interesting sort of spot to observe a lot of the trends that are going on in the conscious movement, right? I think just talking about conscious living is beautiful, but I think if we can get specific and start pinpointing the different areas that sort of conscious awakening, conscious living is occurring, then people listening can be like, oh, I'm already in that, or I'm getting close to that. I can start sort of leaning into it. So I'd love to hear, Steve, through the work that you've done with Humanity's team, what trends are you noticing sort of coming up that people should look out for as they start to consciously awake and step into more of their power?
There are a couple that are huge right now. And as you mentioned, we have a streaming platform, a conscious streaming platform. We're a nonprofit. So, of course, that means you're going to you're always getting your price down. My background was for-profits, get the top line growth, get the bottom line growth, Silicon Valley. I know that world. I left it 20 years ago. Now it's the team says, when can we get the price down again? Because the whole objective is you want to get that community, that streaming platform in every home on the planet translated, because as you mentioned, the Greg Bradens and Nassim Harrimans and Bruce Liptons and HeartMath and Neil Donald Walsh and Michael Beck, all of them, hundreds of them are on the platform. And you go through just a couple of their masterclasses, and I promise you just are going to look at the world in a whole different way and understand yourself and the invitation of life in a whole different way, which is the whole reason as a nonprofit we're putting so much focus on our streaming platform, is because it nurtures and supports individuals and communities and even conscious business. So we don't concentrate just on top line and bottom line. But what are a couple of big trends right now? Two of them. One is science, the science of this whole of life. So, and we've got a number of big science programs with Greg Braden's actually in all of them right now. Got a new one coming out that he's not in, but science is self-empowerment, technology, consciousness, and evolution. The forbidden science, this recent one that he did with Nassim Harriman, it's called forbidden science because it's not allowed in the classroom here in the United States anyway. They just won't allow it, where we of oneness, and then 5-year guide. And there's a new science one coming. So if people are fascinated by science, and I can see why, because what we're talking about, Harrison, you and I here, are our most fundamental, basic, our most important beliefs, our beliefs about life, So, and we grew up with an incomplete understanding where they just talked about the human body and, your flesh, and you're at some number of years, you're going to go to bones and dust, and then they'll put you 6 feet under. It's all true. It wasn't untrue. It's very incomplete. We're actually learning now, we're energetic beings. We need to remember the whole spiritual basis of life, which is what conscious living is. We're renewing and restoring our connection with the divine, each other, and all of life. Science is important. It gives us a foundation where we can stand on something on real firm ground and understand that we're changing our beliefs because of what science says is so. So that's huge. The other one that's huge right now is what is the near-death experience, and also the mediumship areas where we're lifting the veil. This has been another big problem area for us, where we're living unconsciously, where candidly we use the word death. In humanities team, we're not using the word death anymore. This might sound strange to some of your viewers, but I'll just say I know from all the mediums that I work with and the near-death experience people that I work with, death as we know it, where the body, we die, we're gone, dust 6 feet under the body. Yes, it's true. It does, bones and dust 6 feet under is true. But our consciousness, we are conscious beings. We're energetic beings. We go to the non-physical realm, and people are fascinated as they come to understand these near-death experiences. We have the big program we're doing right at the moment is with Dr. Eben Alexander. He wrote Proof of Heaven, a New York Times bestseller. Karen Newell, who's his partner, and then Suzanne Giesman, who's one of the most esteemed mediums today. And the three of them teach this program. There's a free program, actually, this coming Tuesday. It's called The Wisdom on the Other Side of the Veil. If you go to humanitiesteam.org, you'll see right at the top, you'll see it. It's a free program. We're broadcasting it for the very first time on Tuesday evening in the United States. And then there's an encore on Saturday next week. And people are fascinated, where they understand deeply exactly how this works. Once our consciousness leaves the body, what happens, and what is that journey like? We take people through that whole journey of what exactly is happening, how that works. And here's the interesting thing is there are many near-death experiences now, going all the way back to Plato, this 450 BCE, 2,500 years ago, that have been reported. And you know what? They're all essentially saying the same thing. So it's not like we're just having some hallucination. No, they're saying that they report a similar process where we travel through a light tunnel. There's a life rhythm, all of these things. And then mediumship also, where like Suzanne Giesman and others that we're working with, where they're teaching you to connect with your own loved ones and angels and guides and others in the non-physical realm. Just this morning, I connected for the first time with my sister who passed in the early 1980s. I've connected with my dad many times. My grandmother was pretty strange when she came in, because I wasn't that close to her. And she came in with a message for my wife. So the mediums will train you in processes where you can actually sit and meditate, and you can connect with the afterlife. Everybody can be taught to.
Yeah. I think this is so. Thank you for outlining those trends, Steve. I'm so excited for all of this, but let's speak to the mediumship one, because this is another example of the connection between the microcosm and the macrocosm, in reference to, I've seen this in my world, right? Just from not just the work that I do, but this show, right? The people that have come on this show in the same sort of way, it sounds like, through Humanities Team, the people that you're interacting with, sharing the same sort of thing. And I think it's a symptom, Steve, of this larger movement of consciousness expansion, right? We're starting to realize that, death itself, it was always a transformation, right? It was never an end to something, right? You spoke about the science lens before as well. We know that if we break everything down, we're energy, right? And energy is neither destroyed or created, is either moving or transforming into something else. So you combine these two ideas of the science of energy and our connection to spirits and angels and guides. To me, I'm excited for the collective to embrace it more, right? I think it's going to be such a powerful shift. A question that comes up with it, Steve, for people that, because I have a lot of light workers and healers and souls on different parts of their awakening process that tune into the show, that, they hear us and they understand these topics and they might be a part of these trends, but they maybe still live in communities where it isn't accepted to speak about, or it isn't seen as the social norm to even, incorporate into one's daily life. How do we start to support those souls? How do we support those souls that are physically isolated from communities that don't see them yet?
Yeah, an important question. So let me first and address one of the things you said, and then come to that. You said energy can't be destroyed. So that actually is an equation, Einstein. E equals mc squared. Now we don't need to go into the science of that or that math right now, but that means energy cannot be destroyed. It can't. This is a proven thing in physics, and we're energetic beings. Well, there you go. We. The energetic beings can't be destroyed. We've demonstrated that with math and science. So it can help people with this notion of that we go to the afterlife, the non-physical realm. And because we start living life in a whole new way, where we're not any longer afraid of death. I mean, truly, have no fear of death. I'm married and happily married, and I have 2 kids. And of course, I would miss them. So I'm not saying I want to go transition tomorrow. But I'm not afraid at all of transitioning. Now, to the larger question that you wanted me to get to here, and let's see,
supporting spiritual beings that in communities that are physically isolated from people that see them.
Right. So this is one of the things. This is what part of the reason I'm doing this program with you now, Harrison, it's why I wrote my book, A New Universal Dream, is to support people on the conscious journey, because there are arduous moments on that path. There's a lot of learning on this path. One of the things that's very challenging when I talk about arduous moments, which I talk about in my book, is when I was in Silicon Valley, and I mentioned, I was, to people that knew me, I was a rock star. This guy started a $75 million company. Then he started another one. And then he's in this community with all these people. And then what do you think happened when I went to my family and my coworkers and friends and said, I'm selling it all. I'm leaving it completely. I'm now, my journey is a spiritual journey, on this conscious path. There were people love me, like, what are you doing? You're holding the lottery ticket and you're telling me you're going to burn it. What are you doing? So, but this is the thing, Harrison. I know you would come in strongly here yourself, because you've got this big program that you were inspired to create, is if we will tune out that worldly noise, and follow that still small voice within that's saying, do it, this is your station in life, go there. And don't worry about what family and friends and so on share. We will be led. The universe has our back. We will be led to this beautiful higher ground, just like you were with your program here, just like I was with Neil Donald Walsh, who co-founded Humanity's Team with me 20 years ago, to this huge, we're the largest nonprofit in transformational education in the world. That's all from following my voice. And I think, Harrison, where you and I just talk about, we listened to the voice. It was hard. There were a lot of hard moments, but we stayed true to it. We stayed in our courage and we did it. And I will tell you, the universe does not play favorites. When we said the whole ocean in a drop is who you are, that's every single one of you watching, every single one of you. And the universe will support every single one of you as you listen to that still small voice and go to your own station in life. even when it means, leaving jobs, leaving relationships, there can be very challenging things we're called to, but we're always supported in a huge, huge way. And we go to this higher ground when we listen to that voice.
Yeah. So beautiful, Steve. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm going to take your Rumi quote and I'm going to double down and throw one right back at you that connects to this following of the voice, right? I think it's on par with the ocean quote. They're probably the same in terms of my favorites. It's the way appears once we start to walk it, right? And it shows us that, when we do listen to that hit that you beautifully just outlined, that soul guidance, we don't need to know the 10th step, the 5th step, even the 2nd step. We just need to take the one with that faith of that power moving through us, right? So with this piece here, Steve, and this is what I want to get your thoughts on next, that soul that, is breaking free and following their conscious path, I've noticed that if that person desires to have relationships on that path, business, romantic, friendship, whatever it is, that relationships start to come to them. They attract, rather than searching for the people to fill the space that they may be looking for, they come into their field once they join up to their inner alignment, right? As an example, Steve, you came into my field, right? Through my alignment, right? Through my connection, right? There was no pushing or forcing. It just flowed, right? So I'm wondering if you could speak to this phenomena, and have you noticed this on your path?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I think a lot about this. So, and I've even had some really unbelievable wisdom come to me in the last week on this. First, let me just say that what science is saying is there's a universal wisdom, right? And some even call it, it's like 452 hertz or something, that there's a universal frequency, a universal cohesion, to all of life, and when it's fully awake. So, but here on the earth, where we're now a young species, what happened? We're energetic beings, and so individually and with the small groups, and we have a consciousness that is not at that level yet. So, which is why Einstein shared that quote at the beginning of the program that you read, that we need to elevate our consciousness. That's how we get there. He says no problem can be solved at the same level that the problem was created. We need to elevate our consciousness. Now, I believe how it works, this was the wisdom that came to me just in the last week, is that there are different levels of consciousness as we're elevating our consciousness. There's the individual, there's the tribal, then there's a super consciousness, there's a supra consciousness, which is the highest level. In those higher levels, what we're doing is we're focusing on that pure higher goal. You mentioned the earth, where we and each other, where you're really feeling the connection and the love for the earth, for each other, and where we're wanting this earth to find its way to this conscious higher ground, this tipping point, where we tie in at that level, at the highest level. It's called supra consciousness. And I believe the way it works is there are these words: omnipresence, omniscience, and omnipotence, right? And omnipresence is connection. Omniscience is wisdom, and omnipotence is power. And I believe each of those levels has its own omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence. So, in other words, and I'll bring it back to you and me in a second here, Harrison, where we just are aiming, focusing, dreaming into that beautiful healed planet alchemy of everything around us, and we really stay focused on that. That's our dream. And every day we're getting up to serve that. Then the connection, wisdom, and power at that level will come in. And then astounding things happen. We've all experienced in our own life miracles. Astounding kinds of miracles will happen in terms of who we're connected with, resources that are dropped in, et cetera. I think, Harrison, that's how, with the work you're doing and I was doing, we just boom, it dropped in of time. You all should connect. There's a shared purpose here. There's some synergy. There's something nurturing here, where we get together and share.
That's beautiful. I love that hypothesis and that structure, Steve. And I think it resonates deeply with me. And I think all the people in the chat and Facebook, they're connecting to it as well. I'm just grateful, right? And I'm happy that you shared that, because it shows, everyone that's tuning in that has a lot of fear, right? Because if you have fear, you're normal, right? You're like us, you're normal. But fear is, I think, the greatest illusion that we have, right? Fear is the thing that keeps us safe, that keeps us in our comfort zone, that keeps us in the familiar. But in my experience, and I think you can hear from Steve's beautiful experience, it is often in that comfort zone we're not tapping into our greatest potential. And if we can know, like you're saying, that these levels of awakening are waiting for us, then I know for me, it's a soothing element for that fear that can sometimes take me away.
Yeah, absolutely. And, of course, fear, false evidence appearing real. Shared with people, even I remember 10 years ago, I was having dinner with a friend who was wanting me to do something, and it wasn't something I could do. And I said, there's really nothing that could hurt me or damage me in any way, because this whole, we don't die, right? So once we really cross that threshold of you can't even kill me, because I can't die. And while we're following that still small voice thing, let's go back to what you said. We only need to know that first step. The next steps will come to us. Boom, then this one, then this one. It is true. Once we get onto the flow of that, where we understand where the fear is dropping away, and then it's almost completely removed, where we know, boy, then the next step will come, and the next step will come, and we are clear all the while. There's not even death. There's really nobody that could damage us or hurt us in any way. And once we get in that flow, and we're living in that supra-conscious realm where we're really just here, for the higher good, just to help people, because we understand they're a part of me. It just is, I'm a part of them. Then this whole fear thing, just like death, it falls away. There is false evidence appearing real. We've left it behind, like with the word death.
Yeah. That it's one of my favorite. We're so in sync, Steve. That's one of my favorite definitions for fear, the false evidence appearing real. I like to explain that to everyone because it highlights it beautifully. And just supporting what you're saying, Lance in the Facebook chat added a comment. You are well supported and beloved of the God presence that is within you. Right. And it's saying what you're saying here around that guidance and that net that exists in all of us. Steve.
Yeah, and I think we just, as you know, the co-founder of Humanities Team with me, Neil Donald Walsh, he wrote the Conversations with God books. There's a children's book that came out of that called The Little Soul in the Sun. And it's, which reduces it down to just a children's little thing. But it's the true story, actually, of the whole Conversations with God cosmology. And what it says, this little soul comes up to the big soul, the one, and says, "Hey, one, I want to be the light." And the big soul says, "Well, of course you are the light. I mean, that's all there is here is the light, right? This is in the non-physical realm." Little soul says, "Yeah, but I want to feel like the light, not just know I'm the light with all the light. I'm like a candle in the sun." And the big soul says, "Well, the only way that you can really know yourself as the light is you're going to have to be born into the world where there's darkness, because the light has to be in darkness for the light to feel as the light." The little soul says, "Then I want to be born." And so the little soul is born into the world where there's fear, there's a sense of death, there's candles that are blown out all over the place, there's darkness, and the little soul stays in his or her presence and walks around as the light, as alchemy, as healing, trying to help people as best she or he can, and then returns to the big soul at the end and saying, "I did it," So, I mean, that little story,
beautiful.
It's really, I think, the story. I really honestly believe every single one of us was that little soul that said, well, I want to come down here, especially now during the big shift where it's all on the line, existential crisis, and we said, well, I want to go down. I want to be part of that. I want to see if I can, maybe be a healer, an alchemist, just do a little part, to help create this shift, this pivot in this new direction. And there's our invitation here, all of us.
Yeah. I love it. So a couple things here, Steve. One, I'm so excited. I have Neil's coming on the show in a couple of weeks as well. So I'm excited to talk to him, and I'm going to bring up that. I didn't know he made that children's book version. So I'm excited to talk about that book. But two, what you're saying here with this story of the soul, it highlights many things. A lot we've talked about here today around polarity and the need for the darkness. But it also shows us that, and I fall victim to this. Sometimes we can get so esoteric and we can zoom so far out that we ask the question, what's the point, right? Why even, like, if I'm unconditional love and if God is everything, what's the point of just being here in this 3D realm and, being in the messiness of being human? And, that story that you just highlighted, it gives us that meaning. It gives us, we're here to experience it all, and we're here to show up in our light and be in that earth school, right? Do the things with the meaning that we're here. Do you resonate with that, Steve?
I absolutely do. Yeah. And boy, this is the big one that we've got to have right in front of us every day, because, they say there's inspiration and expiration, right? And inspiration is the breathing in, expiration, breathing out. And it's that breathing in and knowing why we came here, that we did all, I believe we all chose to be here at this moment that's in the history of the planet. There's never, ever been a moment even close to this moment where we have to come into this whole new understanding about God and about life, about the planet, and then start living into it, not just having the awareness, but in a sense, going from the logic center of our mind to the wisdom center of our soul. We move, that's part of this whole involution. We move down to the wisdom center of our soul. And in the wisdom center of our soul, all the things, Harrison, you and I are talking about become operative. This is what we naturally do.
Yeah. I love it. That journey, for people that are tuning in, if you've read my book, one of my chapters is the longest road we'll ever take. And it's what you just said, right? That journey from the head into that powerful heart space. Steve, it's been a pleasure to chat with you today, and I want to be mindful of your time and respectful of your energy. I have one more question before we wrap up, but before I get to that, I want to give you a bit of space here now. I know you have a beautiful book that we've referenced a couple times throughout this chat and the themes that's coming out. We've referenced Humanity's Team. So if you want to speak to these beautiful resources and where people can get them and find out more, I'd love to hear it.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Well, so the book, it's this 50 plus year true story. It just came out 3 weeks ago. It's called A New Universal Dream. So you can Amazon and booksellers have it. And it's this true story of me from age 12 to living in a home with a divorced mom, 6 brothers and sisters, a little teeny home. And then 11 years later, finding myself there in Silicon Valley, right time, right place, launching these 2 $75 million companies, being in that center of wealth creation before I decided to journey in this whole new direction toward conscious living. And then what I do throughout the book is I stop and share, wow, this is what I learned. And these are some tools that and techniques and processes and wisdom that I developed to move to that next chapter and that next chapter all the way to where I am now with my partners and colleagues in Humanity's Team all over the world. So it's laced with those tools, techniques, processes, and wisdom for living consciously, and that help people get through some of these tough spots. Like I mentioned, only one of them here, earlier in the program. Incidentally, Humanity's Team is very strong in Australia and New Zealand. So hopefully you've got some listeners. We have a lot of friends and partners, colleagues down there. A New Universal Dream. If you go to anewuniversaldream.com, you can read a little bit about the book. The first 4 chapters are opened up, and we're giving away, again, we're a nonprofit, right? So we're not trying to, this is the opposite of making more money. So we give away my Conscious Leadership Masterclass, which is a $299 US masterclass with the $19 book. So you just enter your receipt number there on the site, and then we'll give you the whole masterclass as you order a $19 book. So it's a pretty neat deal, and hopefully, yeah, the whole purpose again was to support people on the conscious journey. There's a lot of challenge out there. It's not like it's just a panacea type journey, though it certainly develops into that, which I think you and Harrison, you and I have given good context to in this discussion. So then humanitiesteam.org. So our nonprofit is spelled with a Y, humanitiesteam.org. And if you go up to the top programs, there's lots and lots of free programs. Those science programs, every single one of them has a free program. You'll see Greg Braden, Asim Harriman, Bruce Lipton, Lynn McTaggart. They're all in these free programs. Pull those down. And then if you have the desire, the streaming platform, which is it's the $300 a year. It's actually $399 a year for the streaming platform, or $39.99 a month. That's US. And it's got hundreds of these programs on it. There's also the 1-for-1. So where we're giving it away to people that are on the conscious journey and really don't have, any budget at all. So humanitiesteam.org. Yeah, go check that out. And then humanitiestream.net is where the streaming platform, if you want to just look at the streaming platform with the Y, humanitiestream.net, you can check that out.
I love it. And as always, for people tuning in on the podcast, I'll put all the links in the show notes so you can go straight to those beautiful resources that Steve outlined. And I'll just say that, one of my intentions for doing these chats with people like Steve is to not just convey these beautiful products and opportunities and programs for people to tune into, but also to see the frequency and the heart and the love behind them. And Steve, I just want to thank you for showing us that love, showing us that frequency today, and the beautiful work that you do in the world, which leads me into my last question. And I'm very interested, actually. I'm always interested in how people answer this question, but particularly you, based off what we've chatted about today. This is the cosmic love antenna. And one of the reasons I call it that is along my journey, I started off becoming as a child, very disillusioned with my higher power being a man on a cloud outside of me. So I sort of came full circle and remembered that my high power is love in all of the ways. So I'm wondering for you, Steve, in your world, how do you define that love word personally?
How do I define that love word? Well, for me, it's really the thing I'm focused on every day that gets me out of bed very early in the morning. I go to bed early too, but I'm usually up like around 5 a.m. Is I see what that dream, that vision that we're talking about, where it's there in full. And before I transition, before I leave this planet, that we are experiencing that, young and old, in countries all over the world, this microcosm, macrocosm. There's enough of us who have shifted into conscious living, remembering that the whole world is tipped, and that where we know ourselves as divine presence, as love, as the expression of love itself, as health and healing and well-being and alchemy, where we know that and have intimate relationships that way. And education is experiencing that with healthcare and politics and so on. So it's basically love that's given full expression in all parts of life, where I can see that this earth is moved in that direction. And, and as we know, that's we're traveling some distance from the earth that we live on today to experience that. But wow, I mean, where we're a part of that, why would you not want to be a part of creating that? My God, is there anything more precious, more beautiful than that?
Not for me, Steve. Not for me. I love it. What a beautiful answer. Thank you for your divine presence today, Steve. I love you very much, and I appreciate your beautiful light and the soul that you are, and the work that you're doing here in this world. There's a lot of love coming through the Facebook chat to you as well. So thank you for your time, Steve, and I'm sending you so much love.
Love you back, Harrison. Yeah, and viewers, love you all. And let's just do this, clear our limiting beliefs and live as the highest and grandest person that we can be, being that we can be.
That's it. That's it. Thank you for tuning in, beautiful beings. If you got some value out of this chat today and it brought you guidance, brought you any insight, please share this with a lover, a friend, a family member that you feel it can impact. But as always, we send you light, we send you love. And until next time here on the show, stay beautiful. Bye, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Cosmic Love Antenna with me, your host, Harrison. If you gained value or this episode hit your heart, please remember to share this out with a friend, a family member, or a lover. You can also leave your love over on Apple reviews and Spotify star feedback, and this helps me spread my frequency to more souls in need. Finally, if you want to connect with me deeper, want to reach out, interested in coaching, please follow me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn at Harrison Mar, Mar spelled M-E-A-G-H-E-R. Sending you so much love.
Electricast.